Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel, and if this is your first time here, hello, welcome. This is Essential Patience and I Am Patience, and in today's video we are going to talk about how much a car should cost you. A few weeks ago I posted about my car buying experience, and I think the question that arises from that is that how much should you actually be spending on a car, and that is personalized to you as a person because personal finance is personal. So today's video I'm going to go over a video that the Money Guys put together and their rules about buying a car. I've heard a lot of rules about buying cars, including say Dave Ramsey's, all things that are wheels, boats, vehicles. They should not be worth more than 50% of your salary. And he has other rules about buying cars in cash. And I tend to agree with the buying in cash, even though I did not. But in today's video, we're going to go over rules. And this is because everybody's in a different financial area. And there are people who are going to take out loans anyway, whether they have the money or they don't. They wouldn't want to put such a large amount of money at once on a car. So let's go into the rules that they have so that you would know how much you should be aiming to purchase your car for. And believe me, it's not what people are out here buying their cars for. There are people who are spending over $1,000 a month on a car. Depending on your income, I still think it'll be reasonable, but if we're not counting people's pockets and they have the money, sure, it could actually fit well into their budget if you're paying attention to it. But that does not mean that a lot of people can actually afford that. Just because you have a car payment for like $500 a month and it doesn't seem that big to you, doesn't mean you can actually afford it. So let's go straight into it, watch the video, and then we will go over some points.
How do you actually buy a car the right way?
Yeah, there is a right way to do it. There's not a consensus across the financial world and across financial minds that fall into this, but we're going to tell you our rules. These are the rules that we think if you will follow these, you can buy an automobile the right way. And the very first one...
Before we get into their rules, it is so true. There are so many opinions because in personal finance, people build wealth in different ways. There's not one set path. There are some principles that are very much across the board. For example, investing. Everybody will tell you to invest, but invest in what? Invest how often? That depends on who is talking about it and if they have some sort of personal agenda motivating you to invest in one thing versus the other. Budgeting is huge. Very few financial advisors will tell you not to budget. Almost unheard of. Having a 3 to 6 month emergency fund across the board, people would always tell you to do these things. But when it comes to buying items, things that are especially not considered assets but more liabilities, buying depreciating assets, everybody has an opinion. And I think that as long as you find the one that works best for you and the one that is solid in advice, you should follow it. And I think this is one of the best ones out there.
Is to follow what we call 20-3-8. And quite simply, we want you to put 20% down. We don't want you to finance it for any more than 3 years or 36 months. And when you add up all of your car payments, no matter how many cars that you have, all of your car payments in aggregate cannot exceed 8% of your monthly gross income. So 20% down, don't finance for any more than 3 years, cannot exceed 8%, but there's some little caveats we also throw in there.
Well, I think it's a...
Before we get into all that, when I was buying a car, I actually followed something very similar to this. If you are not taking on a bunch of packages and you put down 20% of the car's worth, then you're not going to be underwater, which means there's no need for gap insurance. And that's where the 3 years also comes in. If you put down a hefty down payment and you're already buying the car within 3 years and finishing the payments within 3 years, there's no need for gap insurance, which can save you anywhere from $500 to over $1,000. So you do save more money by putting down more and by taking on a shorter loan term. A shorter loan term also means that interest rates is lower. The longer you are buying a car for, because time is passing, inflation is happening, you're probably going to get a much higher interest rate. But Toyota was running a promotion that as long as it was 48 months or under, you can get a 3.99%, which was amazing.
It's important because I saw recently now there's this some other financial channels are pushing 24/10, and I was like, huh. You see
That
what they've
sounds
done here?
awfully
That
familiar.
sounds very close to about 23/8. I don't know if they're just rounding up or...
So I have heard of 24/10, and what that means is that put down 20% for no more than 4 years, and then it should be no more than 10% of your income.
I feel like it's important. The 20% down, that's making sure that you actually have some equity in the vehicle. The 3 years versus 4 years, because now.
And also, I don't know if you've heard, but if you drive a new car off a parking lot, I think it says that it depreciates by like 10% immediately. So if you're not putting down at least 10%, all of a sudden you're underwater just by driving the car off. By the time you sign the finance papers, after taxes, all the packages they charge you, you are already underwater. And that's before even the interest rates hit, warranty, and your gap insurance. You're already underwater.
Now that I'm seeing more people are pushing this 24-10, I like 3 years because we're going to talk about depreciation a little bit more here in a second. But these things do drop, and I never want you to get in that underwater position. And I think it also will keep your wallet and purse in check from what your eyes and your ego want you to do. So 3 years is definitely going to squeeze you and keep you from buying too nice of a car, because the longer you spread it out, gets you closer to focusing on the payments versus what you actually owe. So that 3 years is going to protect you from that on the mental trap that you can fall into.
And that is something I definitely talked about in my video about buying my car and getting scammed. The whole thing about payments versus the total cost of the car. Stop focusing about the monthly payments, because if you want a $300 monthly payment, they can spread out for you for 6, 7, 8, and even now, maybe even 9 years. Is that what you want? To be paying off your car loan for 6, 7, 8 years? I don't think so, because the more you're paying that money towards payments, then you're taking away the ability for that money to go elsewhere. So 3 years is good enough to pay off the car. It's still quick enough to move on to something else and have your money work for you in a different area, as long as you're not going to finish and then buy a new car immediately after.
And the 8%, a lot of people said, where did you guys come up with 8% of your gross income? If you think about the fact that when you look at general finances, we're trying to make sure that you have an abundant life where you not only get to save and invest for the future, but you actually get to live at the end of the day. And unfortunately, a part of the messy middle and building wealth is you probably do owe money, whether it's your mortgage, whether it's student loans, whether it's cars. So if you take all that into account, you've got to keep your total debt payments below somewhere in that 35 to 40% range. Well, your housing's going to be 25% of a lot of that when you do a mortgage. We wanted to make sure that you actually had enough life. That's where the 8% came from. And then that leads to some of these other rules, Bo, that you were talking about.
A lot of people who are living paycheck to paycheck, they have car debt, and oftentimes an even bigger car payment. Rent is one of the things that we can't always control. The market kind of control that, because you can go for the median cost of rent in your area, and of course you can look for places that are way cheaper, but I would personally splurge more on the place that I actually live than on my car, because I spend most of my time at home. And so when you're buying a car, realize that it's a transportation system to take you to and from. It needs to be safe, it needs to be reliable. But beyond that, a lot of things are excess. If you already have debt, such as student loans, credit cards, personal loans, mortgage, you have a mortgage and you are living by yourself and paying rent, that takes on a big chunk of your income. When you have such a big car payment, your 50% looks a whole lot different than if you had a manageable payment.
I don't want you buying a luxury car, trying to look at this and figuring out, okay, I want to get a fancier car, but the longer I finance it, the more I can afford it. No, you're faking success at that point.
Keeping up with the Joneses, trying to look rich rather than be rich.
You know, this is supposed to be transportation to get you to your job, and then when you want to buy a nicer car, the luxury brands, and I always hesitate. I'll pick on the ones that everybody kind of agrees on. That's your BMWs, the Mercedes, the Jaguar. But I'm not going to, Tesla's in that gray zone, but I still put Tesla in that category because it's expensive.
Well, Teslas kind of were expensive. Now I think the prices are kind of dropping. It's not what it used to be 2-3 years ago when the country was going crazy over Teslas.
Treat that as you better pay it off within the first 12 months, same as cash, because that way it will keep you honest. And then that leads to the last rule, Bo, that is most important on building an army of dollar bills. And what is that one?
That is that if your monthly investments do not exceed your car payment, you're doing it wrong. Saving $100 a month into your portfolio, when you have a $500 car payment, you are out of whack. You have to make sure that the dollars you are sending into your portfolio for your future self are greater than the dollars you are using to purchase an asset that's going to get less and less and less valuable over time. If you have that out of whack, this is the cold water, this is the painful thing, you might need to come up with some sort of corrective action. Either figure out how do I save more, or maybe the car that I'm in right now is not the car that I should be in.
And a lot of Americans do not even have $8,000 saved up. I did a whole video on emergency funds, and about 25% of Americans do not even have money for a $500 emergency. But the median car payment for a used car is over $500, and the median payment for a new car almost $800 in the United States. So here we have people spending way more on a car payment each month than they have in savings. That is so backward. And I'm glad he said with the luxury car, you need to pay it off within 12 months. Because it brings into the question, can you afford it, or can you afford the payments as long as it is spread across many, many years? If you could only buy a luxury car and pay it off within 12 months, so many people would not have the luxury cars that they have, because honestly, a lot of people don't have that money. They afford the payments, but they can't afford the car. And when you live your life on payments, that's all it's ever going to be. They're trying to get us from a point of thinking payment to payment rather than to building a future for ourselves. And I appreciate that advice.
We take fire from all angles.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
We're in the Millennium Falcon, and then we got the fighters coming at us, and we're pivoting around because we just covered the side where people say, why don't I just keep the car finance longer, you know, and that way I can let my money work, you know, because maybe you did finance a car when interest rates were much lower.
Sure.
So we just gave you why we don't want you to extend that too long, because we don't want you to be underwater while you're driving the car. But then there's another camp on this side that's like, guys, you should never finance a car. You should.
That's the Dave Ramsey one. Dave Ramsey's like, nope, do not finance a car, buy in cash.
Pay cash. If you can't afford it, you know, go buy a jalopy. Go buy something.
A lot
'cause-
of the advice
and look,
out there.
and as a kid, I mean, back when newspapers were actually a legitimate thing, there used to be an entire section of the newspaper that would be cars for under $1,000.
Really?
Oh yeah, see, I'm older than you. So it's no, there used to be, anybody who's of my age will remember, because it used to be a fun thing, especially when you were.
Definitely not in my age. Cars were under $1,000, no. But I've heard Dave Ramsey say something like that. But that's also because he believes in the fact that you can't file for bankruptcy if you just have no debt. And because of his experience with his bankruptcy and over 30 years of teaching people, he says just stay out of debt. And honestly, if most people stayed out of debt, they will be in a good financial situation. There are not many cons that you can list about somebody who just refuses to take out debt and rather work for what they have and buy everything in cash.
For about 13, 14 years old, and you start daydreaming about
You
the
start
days you turn
circling them.
16, drive, you're like, ooh, let me go look and see what's under $1,000. Because realize inflation has, a car now costs $30,000 to $40,000. Back then, a car might have only been $15,000 to $20,000, so you could still go buy something. But the problem I have with that $1,000, $2,000 car that you can go pay cash for is that nobody ever talks about the fact that you've got to be able to get to work.
Absolutely.
I mean, because you know, you can get away with it once if you call your employer and say, you know what, my car broke down on the way to work. But on the second and third time, they start going, what's wrong with this person?
That's exactly how I felt. And for me, safety was a big thing. I definitely did not want to be on the side of the road with my car engine exploded or whatever. Don't know what to do and have to wait and get told. And just for safety purposes, I decided to put a little bit more into the car. But even then, it was not something extravagant. It was just a Toyota Corolla. I did not need a luxury BMW in order to achieve that. You can still do it for a reasonable price.
I'll get
Yeah,
my
plus-
homework kind of
And then the other thing I think about is just the reliability of the fact that you get that call from a relative or somebody who wants you to come pick them up at the airport at 9:30 at night, and then you're like, man, I'm a little nervous because I don't know if my car will make it. Or if you had to go do a road trip 3 hours away because there's an emergency and you're trying to help somebody out. If you don't trust your car, psychologically, that does something.
Sure.
Not only is it paying for you to get a job, you know, getting you to and from your important resource of the job, but it's also just the reliability of all the other things that come at you with life. So we've tried to create a system, because I'm not a handy person. I grew up in a household where my father and my brother both had some certifications.
I am not handy either. I can barely fix a car. Light came on in my car and it was talking about my tire air pressure. I was freaking out. I thought something was wrong with the car. I barely knew what to do. I even went to work late that day because I was like, should I drive this car? Is it safe to drive? And that was just like low tire pressure. And I was a quality engineer at an automotive plant.
Where the mechanics in the neighborhood, they could fix anything. They could MacGyver it, you know, paper clip. They could make anything work. Me, I could tell you from hanging out with them the names of the parts just from being around them
You
and their
got handed the paper
conversations.
clips, right?
But I didn't know how to fix anything. And it just wasn't. I have learned that we've had to create a path, a bridge, to let people actually be able to have reliable transportation. And that's where we came up with 23A.
Now, don't mishear us. Do we think it's great to pay cash for a car? Absolutely. Do we think it's a good thing if you're someone in a position where you can just write a check and you don't finance? Absolutely. The reason we came up with 23A is exactly what you said. It's to give some guardrails so that you can get into a car that you need to be in, even if you're not at that stage of life right now where every car is paid in cash. We take a lot of flack. People are making it sound like we're telling people you got to go out and borrow money.
No.
Absolutely not. But if you need to, that's okay. Make sure you do it the right way.
And they are not encouraging people to go borrow money to buy a car. But I do believe in their principles. And when I was buying a car, it certainly rang true. I used their principle and I was able to pay off my car way earlier than the 3 years. But I still think that paying for a car in cash will always beat paying for it with a loan, because you don't even have to take that interest. Even if people are saying leverage, some people are leveraged up to their eyeballs. And for me, just the peace of not owing anything, the peace of not having to make payments will always outweigh the advantages of leveraging your money. Now that we've listened to the video, let's go over some main points. So of course, the first one is making sure you put down 20%. This ensures that you have equity in your car, and the moment you drive off the parking lot, your car is not underwater. The second thing is making sure that the maximum time you're financing for is 3 years to help combat inflation. For the third one is 8%. I wish they had dived more into gross or net income. I think they meant net income, but sometimes people also mean gross income. This is the same thing when it comes to housing and mortgage. Sometimes they use like 28% of your gross income. Others use 28% of your net. I know Dave Ramsey does 25% of your take-home pay. But this is the way people can buy a bigger car, because if you use gross, because it's not specified, you are able to buy more car. Versus if you use net, which is the money that actually comes into your account. Gross is the money you see on your job offer. They may say, I'm offering you $100,000. But after federal income taxes, maybe if you have state tax, Social Security, Medicare, insurance, retirement, everything comes out. Now you have your net pay, which is the amount of money that comes into your bank account. Sometimes when people do net pay, they don't include any type of 401k contribution or HSA contribution, because that is optional. If you buy a luxury car, make sure to pay it off within a year and don't go too cheap, because you want to make sure your car is reliable and it's safe as well. Things I agree with beyond those points, because I do agree with every single one of them, don't focus on the payment. Instead, focus on the out-of-door price, the actual car. Can you afford that car? If I told you, hey, you can afford a $100,000 car, but I'm going to have to spread the payment over a 10-year period. Could you really afford the car? So let's say you do put down 20%, but now you're still paying over $800 for a 10-year period. That's a long time to be carrying a car payment. By the time you finish paying off the car, you probably wouldn't even like the car anymore. Versus if you focus on the out-of-door price and you ask yourself, can I afford a $100,000 car? Especially if you're making, say, $60,000 or $70,000. You really can't afford that. Even if you're making $100,000, even $250,000, you probably still can't afford a $100,000 car. And you're probably saying that is extreme until you start getting into the fancier Jeeps, trucks. I've heard trucks costing about $100,000, some Teslas, BMWs, G-Wagons, Escalades, and even for cars that are costing the $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 range, add enough packages and it'll become to $100,000. The way I would optimize this is to say that the 8% should be your net. I would also say factor in insurance, gas, and maintenance for that 8% if possible. But if that's even a lot, then you can go up to the 10%, but still making sure that car payments, gas, insurance, maintenance does not go above 10%, because then you're getting to kind of dangerous territory. I would optimize it even more to say that if you can't pay for your car in cash, if you're able to save down the money and you probably not seeing yourself buying a new car for the next 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, this is the best time to start saving, so that when the time comes that you need to buy that car, you will have cash to pay for it. Let's say you decide to buy a car in the next 5 years and you start saving $500 per month. At the end of the year, you have $6,000, and at the end of 5 years, you have $30,000, and that can get you a good car, even in today's market. And if you're in a situation where you have to go for a very cheap car, it should be a temporary fix. So whilst you are buying that car, it should be cheap enough, and you should pay for that car in cash and have money within your budget to be saving up for a new car. But it should be a temporary fix. Typically, those cars don't depreciate a whole lot, and you probably can get more at the scrap yard for the car than it is worth selling. But that's a way you can also regenerate the money. It's not uncommon for somebody to buy a $5,000 car and sell it for $4,500, so you don't lose much even after years of having the car. Now let's get you some examples based on realistic salaries. I took the average median individual income, the average mean individual income, then I also compared the mean household income and the median household income. So let's get into these examples, and it will show you how much car you can afford as each income state. So starting with the median individual income, which is $48,040. Using your gross income, you can afford $320.27 monthly payment, meaning that the total you finance for should be $11,529. And for your down payment, you should put down at least $2,882.04. The car's worth, including financing and taxes, should be about $14,412, meaning you're looking to buy about a $13,500 car maximum. Now, the more packages you have to add on, the less the car should cost. But if you're not adding warranty and everything, a $13,500 car plus taxes should hit that maximum of $14,412. The net will be approximately $40,000 take home. You can afford $266.77 per month. This means that the total financed amount should be no more than $9,600, and your down payment will be $2,400. Your car, including financing, taxes, and everything, should be no more than $12,000 to buy an approximately $11,000 car. The mean individual income in the United States is $59,430. Using that gross income, you can afford $396.20 monthly payment. This adds up to a total finance cost of $14,263.20. The down payment should be at least $3,565.80. And then the total cost of the car, including everything, should be no more than $17,829, meaning that you can afford an approximately $16,500 car. If you go by your net income, which is approximately $49,500, and this for a single person, this median individual, your monthly payment would be no more than $330. For a total financing cost of $11,880. Your down payment should be no less than $2,970, and the total cost of the car should be no more than $14,850 for an approximately $13,500 car you can afford. Now let's go to household. This would mean that every car in the house should be no more than this amount. So for the median household income in the United States is $74,580. For your gross income, all of your household car payments in total should be no more than $497.20 per month, for a total financing cost of all of your cars no more than $17,899.20. Your down payments should total $4,474.80, or no less than that, for a total cost of all of your cars combined $22,374, by approximately $21,000 in cars. This will mean that if you have two cars, each car will be approximately $11,000. For net income, it takes it out to $63,700. Monthly payment should be no more than $424.67, for a total financing cost of $15,288. Your down payment should total no less than $3,822, and your total cost of cars should be no more than $19,110. This will mean that you can afford approximately $17,500 in cars. If you have two cars, you're looking at just under $10,000. Let's go to the mean household income, which is $105,500. $555 for the United States. Using gross income, your total cost of cars should be no more than $703.70 for total financing cost of $25,332. And down payments should total no less than $6,333.30. Total cost of cars, $31,666.50. This means that if you have two cars, their combined cost should be no more than $30,000, about $15,000 cars. If you use net income, this would mean $88,500 take home pay. Total monthly car payment should be no more than $590. For total financing, no more than $21,240. Mean that your down payment is about $5,310, and the total cost of cars combined is no more than $26,550, and the cars you can afford is approximately $25,000. Now I know when you heard those numbers, you are probably thinking these cars have to be cheaper cars, and that's true because most people should not have very expensive cars. If you make over $100,000 household income or individual income, and you have a lot of cars, it puts you in a position for financial destitute. No wonder over 50% of people who make over $100,000 are living paycheck to paycheck, because a lot of them are not following this guideline for cars. They have BMWs, Lexus, Teslas, and cars that you're paying over $1,000 per month in payments for. But just because you make a ton of money does not mean you can always afford a very pricey car. But if you have cash, that changes the equation a little bit. You still shouldn't go overboard for your transportation. Safe reliability should take priority, but it doesn't mean you have to buy a $50,000 car. There are a lot of cars that are decently priced that would not run you six figures or even over $50,000. So with that brings me to an end. Thank you all so much for being here. Let me know in the comment section, do you think you bought way too much car for your income using the examples that I gave? And on your next car, will you be using something like this to help you navigate the cost of car and how much car you should be buying? Remember to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, like this video, and share this video with somebody who you think will be helpful to us. I'm pretty sure you know a lot of people who could use this video, so share with them. They will appreciate it. Ring the notification bell so you do not miss out on any of my future videos. Thank you all so much, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.